meeting. Would like to ask you to come forward and make your presentations. The first group up would be ADOC.
Mr. Chairman, Kenneth Biles, Director of ADOC.
Welcome.
Hope y'all doing well this afternoon. We're asking for an increase in contract to Horn's contract primarily. We do not have the logistical access to be able to award and do what needs to be done. Primarily right now, HUD has changed its rules. And if we don't have the expertise in-house and we make a mistake, then guess what? The state of Alabama's got to pay HUD back. And I don't want to do that. So asking for permission for this contract to be amended.
Any questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaliyah.
Good afternoon. Aaliyah has two contracts on the agenda today. Starting with diverse computing, this is the contract that is designed to implement a new computerized criminal history system for the state. That is correlates with Mission Critical Partners. They are our outside vendor that is working as a consultant to make sure that diverse computing does everything needed to complete the CCH program.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Conservation.
Good afternoon. We have 8 contracts before you today. Most of them are for engineering and design services. The first one is with GMC. It's an amendment.
Any questions? Thank you.
Okay. The next one is for environmental site assessments, phase 1 and phase 2 scope of services.
Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you.
The next one is for original artwork with an artist.
Any questions?
The next one is a no-cost time extension for continued work.
Any questions? Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Another one for environmental assessments, phase 1 and phase 2 work.
Questions?
Okay, thank you. Another one for environmental assessments, phase 1 and phase 2.
Questions?
Okay. We've got 2 more. One with Coastal Alabama for expanding our ecotourism studies.
Any questions?
And the last one is for continued auditing services.
Questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Department of Education.
Good afternoon. Connor Johnston with Department of Education. Education's got 6 contracts on the agenda today. Our first contract is with EMSLink, and this is just an amendment to the original contract to extend the length of the contract.
Any questions?
The next 5 contracts, we can do them individually or in bulk, whichever y'all prefer, because they're all basically for our technical advisor committee that we have to have for our ACAP summative assessment.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Environmental management, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. This first contract we have, these dollar figures are incorrect. I assume it's proper to withdraw that, or will you accept corrections?
I'm sorry, say again.
The dollar figure on this first contract, the direct communications, is incorrect. There's a little miscommunication on that.
What is the correct amount?
The correct amount, it should be $195,000 per year for the next 2 years, $390 instead of $40.
And was this paperwork just incorrect or what?
Yes, when we were discussing this with Jason, there was a little miscommunication and misunderstanding on our part when we were going from 175 to 195, 20 per year, not total, but 20 increase.
Any questions? Any objection to that?
Yeah, that was a misunderstanding on our part, a miscommunication.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll hold this until you submit the
Okay,
correct
proper.
paperwork.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that very much. Okay, we have a second contract, which is a extension in time only. It's a site assessment and remediation in Oxford, Alabama. It's part of a ONOX settlement. There's an escrow account, and it's simply a time extension. The money's coming from the escrow account. It's still there, and there's no request an increase for that.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Just a moment of personal privilege, if you don't mind here. I would like to appreciate you convey appreciation to your department for the work they're doing to assist us with the fire in
Yes,
St. Clair County. It's affecting all the surrounding communities. It's a very serious issue, and we
Yes.
appreciate you guys putting out a press release and working with the local officials there.
And
Helps
we'll
resolve
continue to
that.
do that. It has been quite challenging.
Yes,
But, thank you.
Thank you.
Let us know anything you need on that. We'll
sure.
continue our efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Department of Forensic Sciences.
Good afternoon, distinguished members of the committee. Before you today, we've got an amendment of contract with Birchfield Pinion Associates, which is for the professional design services for our Huntsville Regional Laboratory Medical Facility. The amendment's necessary to adjust the design fees to the actual construction bid amount.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Historical Commission.
Good afternoon. We just have one contract today. It is with Resolve Marine. It is an increase in funds and time. It is for Resolve Marine to design an aid to navigation system to protect the Clotilda from vessels running into it and hitting it. So,
Representative Pringle.
I'm sorry, but 1.5 million taxpayer dollars to mark that location?
no, sir, the original amount was for excavation of the ship, stabilization of the ship, and to understand what we need to do to stabilize it in the water. The additional money is for $541,000 is to design an aid to navigation system. So that other money has already been spent.
An aid to navigation system. You're
Yes,
talking
and that will require core permits, that will require engineering services and design services,
put-
and installation of it.
Put a channel marker in? Lord, everybody knows where that boat is.
Well, just about now, that is probably true, but we're still having issues with people potentially running into it.
I'm not going to hold it, but to put a navigation marker up for $500,000?
Yes, sir, it's the design of it, and with the core permitting that we also have to pay for, and we have to get a barge out there so they can do the work. It's very expensive, I agree, but that's what we're looking at.
I think if it was a private sector thing, it'd be done a whole lot cheaper. I know a couple rednecks that could jet you a piling in and put a marker that says "Don't go here." That'd do it for a lot less money. But thank you.
This is all federal money, is that correct?
It is. It's all federal money.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it
No.
was play money. I'm sorry.
No. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Human Resources.
I'm Jennifer Bush with DHR Legal, and we have an amendment to an existing contract with Warren Averett Technology Group, and it's to increase the dollar amount of the contract.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Labor.
Good afternoon, Arthur Ray, Alabama Department of Labor. This is a new contract. We have a vendor who previously did all our UI modernization prior to the pandemic, thankfully. And now they have to do some additional work that's outside of that original contract. So we've come up with this master services agreement to work on some of the back end of the pandemic, fraud included. And it's all federal money. And of course, we have all the disclaimers, et cetera, sole source master service agreement, E-Verify documents, as well as sole source letter from finance.
Senator Roberts.
2 minutes. What does this do?
What does it do?
Yeah.
It allows us, in other words, the vendor, Nedicent, originally came in and modernized our unemployment system. It was 40, 50 years old, and it was out of step with most other states. They came in and modernized that basic system and still are working on that, but it's now it's a new system. What this does is this takes care of things that are outside of just standing up the software and doing all that work. So for instance, we've got a lot of fraud on the back end in this system. So now we're creating portals that employers can use to report the fraud, things like that. These are individual projects that are being covered by this contract. So this is additional work, therefore an additional contract.
Okay.
Any other questions? Senator Beasley.
Yes, Senator.
I'd just like to ask the question, that during the pandemic, there were just a number of people that were filing that said they were employed by me, which they were not.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Was that widespread across the state?
It was. There was quite a bit of identity theft. And what these people would do is they would acquire other individuals' identities, just make up an employer or purport to be employed by someone, and then would attempt to file the claim. Luckily, with Nedicent there at the front end, we flagged a lot of it on the front end. Then, of course, are still cleaning up some of it on the back end. But yes, sir, it was more widespread than you would imagine. Apparently, when you put out a honeypot, the bees come, as they say. So,
Do we have I heard it was over $1 billion in the state. Do you have a fiscal note on what that was, by any chance?
on total fraud,
Yeah.
no, but I could get it to you.
I was just interested. I didn't expect
Sure.
you
No, it was
that.
extensive. It was
Yeah.
extensive. Yeah.
Any estimate of recoverability?
We're doing it as a percentage now, but we have both internal recovery. We're even chasing people into bankruptcy, if you can believe it, with a straight face that are going in front of a judge and trying to say, yeah, I defrauded the department, stole their money, but I want you to forgive that. We're chasing them into there. We're working with the Attorney General's office on larger cases. But you're talking about $20,000, $30,000 at a pop. But no, we are chasing them. Don't have a percentage for you, but we're actively working on recovery.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Governor's Office.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, we've got a contract with Asbel Communications, it's a renewal for $29,425. And he does strategic communications for our office. And it's the reason we do that is it's cheaper than having a full-time state employee and having to provide benefits and retirement.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Medicaid.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. The Alabama Medicaid Agency has two contracts before you today. The first contract is with Dr. George Sutton, who will provide professional consulting services related to the legislatively mandated preferred drug program.
Questions? Okay.
The second contract is with Myers and Stauffer. This will be primarily for data compilation and calculation services related to the Alabama Medicaid Agency's disproportionate share program related to hospital funding.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Mental Health.
Brian Penn with the Mental Health Department. The first contract we have is Public Partnership LLC. It's a new contract posted to the database, 226 direct solicitations. We had 3 responses. Contractor will be a fiscal agent who coordinates the billing and payment of services for families and individuals who are self-directing services. The funds associated with contract are used in 2 ways. The majority of the dollars go to providers of self-directed services for approximately 522 individuals on the ID and living at home waivers. And the second part is a charge that the vendor makes to the department, $80 to enroll an individual in the program for billing and payment processing.
Any questions? Okay.
The next is Clarent Quality Solutions Incorporated. It's a new contract posted to the database, 334 direct solicitations, 2 responses. The contractor will conduct an in-person national core indicator survey of a sample of 400 ID and living at home waiver participants, plus 50 community waiver program participants. Purpose of the survey is to gather information regarding the quality of the waiver and CWP programs, provide information for oversight, and provide a comparison of results with those of other states.
Questions? Okay.
Next is Organizational Dimensions LLC. It's a new contract posted to the database, 330 direct solicitations, 1 response. Contractor will train our third-party providers and their staff to comply with the human rights regulations issued by CMS. This is necessary for full compliance with the home and community-based settings rule.
Questions?
They're going to, what are they? They're going to go monitor all these home settings? Or we've been required to put all of our mental health patients out into the community in these
These are
community
not
houses?
mental health. These are people who have intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities. They're not mentally ill or anything.
But these are the ones living in these group homes?
Well, the purpose of this is for people who want to live independently, not to be in a group home setting. So they live at home with their parents or on their own sometimes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Oil and Gas Board.
Butch Gregory with the State Oil and Gas Board. This is a contract to clean up some well sites that were unfortunately forfeited to the state. Funds are bond proceeds that we recovered.
Questions? Thank you. Pardons and Paroles Board.
Hello, my name is Claudia Smith, and I represent Pardons and Parole. We have 4 contracts today, all with Alta Point, all for similar services for 4 of our DRCs located in Birmingham, Huntsville, Tuscaloosa, and Montgomery.
I don't have any questions for you, but could the examiner's office answer a question for me? You don't have to do it today. Exactly how many contracts does Alta Point have with the state? It has got to be in the close to $100 million a year. Or I mean, it's huge.
It would be on our disclosure sheet.
No, I'm not just y'all. He's got them with DOC. He's got them with every state agency. Probably shouldn't say this, but he just spent $1 million on his daughter's wedding. I heard. I didn't get invited, but anyway, I want the examiner to let me know exactly the total amount of contracts Alta Point has with the state of Alabama. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senate President Pro Tem.
Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. This contract was SR Communications to help run communications in our office for this calendar year for $30,000.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Transportation.
Clay McBrown with Alabama DOT. We've got 8 contracts before you today. All of them are 80% federal, 20% state match. First 3 are geotechnical services by consultants for our projects.
Any questions?
The next 2 are 2 real estate appraisals for our highway right-of-way acquisition.
Any questions?
Another geotechnical services with GTech LLC.
Questions?
And the last 2 are for our RTOP traffic systems program.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good afternoon. This is an open-end contract for architectural engineering services for our 4 state veterans' homes.
Any questions? Thank you. Now we come to legal services contracts. Chiropractic Examiners Board.
Good afternoon. No, it's okay. Good afternoon. Amy Devers with the Chiropractic Board. This contract is just for a time extension, not any funds.
Any questions? Thank you. Department of Corrections.
Good afternoon. I'm Mandy Spears with the Department of Corrections. Today we have 14 legal services contracts for you. The first is a new contract for Alan Sheehan of Capel and Howard. This is for the representation of multiple defendants in the lawsuit styled Smith v. Dunn. This is a federal court case in the Northern District. Mr. Sheehan was requested due to his extensive experience in this type of litigation. This is a 2-year, not to exceed $200,000 contract.
Questions? Okay.
The next is another new contract for Mr. Sheehan of Capel and Howard. This is for representation of multiple ADOC defendants in the lawsuit styled Ezel versus Dunn. Again, federal court in the Northern District of Alabama. This is a 2-year, not to exceed $200,000 contract.
Questions? Okay.
The third is a new contract for Mr. Sheehan of Capel and Howard. This is for the representation of multiple ADOC defendants in the lawsuit styled Guy versus Dunn in the Northern District of Alabama. This is a 2-year, not to exceed $200,000 contract.
Questions? Okay.
Next is a contract renewal for an additional 2 years with no money added for Philip Piggott of Webster Henry.
Questions? Thank you.
The fifth is a contract renewal with 2 additional years with no money added for Steve Herndon of Herndon Law. This is for the continued representation of defendant Roderick Gadsden in the lawsuit styled Ray v. Gadsden.
Questions? Okay.
Sixth is a contract renewal for 2 additional years with no money added for Terry Tompkins of Rosen Hardwood. This is for the continued representation of multiple ADOC defendants in the lawsuit styled Pilcher v. Dunn.
Questions? Thank you.
Next is a contract renewal for 2 additional years with no money added for Terry Tompkins of Rosen Harwood. And this is for the continued representation of defendant Steve Harrison in the lawsuit styled Ray v. Gadsden.
Questions?
The eighth is a renewal and amendment for William Lunsford of Maynard Cooper and Gale for this case styled Smith v. Dunn. This is a 2-year renewal with an additional $50,000, bringing the contract total to $250,000.
Questions?
Okay, the next is a contract renewal for 2 additional years with no money added for William Lunsford of Maynard Cooper. This is for the representation of multiple ADOC defendants in the lawsuit styled Ezel v. Dunn.
Questions?
The 10th is a contract renewal for 2 additional years with no money added for William Lunsford of Maynard Cooper for the continued representation of multiple ADOC defendants in the lawsuit styled Pilcher v. Dunn.
Questions? Okay.
Next is a contract renewal for 2 additional years with no money added for William Lunsford of Maynard Cooper. This is for the representation of multiple ADOC defendants in the lawsuit styled Guy v. Dunn.
Questions? Okay.
The 12th is a new contract for Mr. Lunsford of Maynard Cooper for the representation of defendant John Ham in the lawsuit styled Turner v. Ham.
Questions?
Oh, I apologize. This is a 2-year, not to exceed $200,000 contract. The 13th is a new contract for Mr. Lunsford of Maynard Cooper for the representation of defendants John Ham and Jefferson Dunn in the lawsuit styled McKee versus Dunn. This is a 2-year, not to exceed $200,000 contract.
Questions?
And I'll let Mary Coleman have the last one.
Hi, I'm Mary Coleman Roberts on behalf of the Alabama Department of Corrections. Our final contract today is a renewal and amendment for William Lunsford of Maynard Cooper and Gale for his representation in the DOJ lawsuit. This is a 2-year renewal with an additional $4 million, bringing the contract total to $9,100,000.
Any questions? Thank you. Department of Finance.
Good afternoon. I'm Darrell Masters, Department of Finance, Division of Risk Management. We have one contract before the committee today for Mr. Steve Herndon, and his legal service was for the division. Mr. Herndon, this is a new contract, but is basically a continuation of 2 previous 6-year contracts from Mr. Herndon, providing the services described therein.
Any questions? Thank you. Department of Human Resources.
I'm Jennifer Bush with DHR Legal, and this is a 2-year contract with Drake Law Group to provide general legal services to the county DHR offices.
Any questions? Thank you. Department of Revenue.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Martin Mitchell with the Alabama Department of Revenue, and we have a single contract for Peter Enrich for expert testimony and some ongoing add-back cases that are being currently litigated. This is a new contract. It would be for 2 years upon the governor's signature till January 2025, and it's for $100,000.
Representative Pringle, you have a question?
Come see me afterwards. Thank you, Mayor Martin.
So can you give a little more explanation for what this is about? Describe tax policy purposes behind other states' add-back statutes. What are we talking about?
There has been litigation, and it started out in the Alabama Tax Tribunal, and it will be ascending to the circuit court. And it is, basically guidance on whether certain deductions should be allowed for intercompany transactions under Alabama's add-back statute. There were no expert witnesses at the tribunal level, at the administrative level. There will be in the circuit court, and the outcome of this litigation will be important to state revenue sourcings as well as businesses across Alabama. So we want to make sure we get it right and that there's some concrete guidance out there.
Is this really any particular legislation, or this goes back to what period of time?
It is actually just a case. There was a case decided, and it's published because it was before the Alabama Tax Tribunal regarding Pfizer. But there are other taxpayers that also have, some of this case will be important to tax policy ramifications in Alabama's add-back statute generally.
So when you say add-back statute, can you give me a little more clarity?
I'm not going to be able to call the code off the top of my head, but with income tax, a lot of times we start with their federal taxable income in Alabama, and with some intercompany transactions across a lot of times royalties or different interest deductions, whether those should be added back to your Alabama taxable income or whether they should be disallowed. Is it a true transaction or not? And they're very tricky kind of case-by-case basis. And so it has resulted in a lot of litigation. So the outcome of this litigation will be important for that type guidance for taxpayers across the state.
This is a state jurisdiction, though, is that right?
Yes.
Any other questions? Senator Roberts?
Are our rules similar to other rules in the Southeast?
They are. Maryland, actually not just the Southeast, all over. So it's a tricky thing that a lot of states have been litigating heavily. It's not quite an Alabama issue, but there are a lot of similar statutes across the state that are similar to Alabama's, Maryland being, kind of one of the ones that have been in the news more recently.
Okay. Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We had one contract added. Do we have copies of that? Okay. Okay, so this was added this past week. Alabama Board of Nursing.
Yes, I'm Alice Henley. I'm the General Counsel for the Alabama Board of Nursing, and we greatly appreciate you allowing us to bring our contract before you. This is a non-litigation legal services contract for 2 years for Mark Wilkerson of Wilkerson and Bryan. He provides our hearing officer services for our administrative hearings that we do pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act.
Okay, so we did agree to let this come forward, but I was really perplexed by the explanation of the email I received, because my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is these services were expired beginning of October.
That is
only
correct.
Recently discovered. And
That is correct.
Causes me questions, one about the internal competency there, number one, and then number two, about his competency, that how would this attorney relying on? So help me understand.
Certainly. What I will say is these are the facts. The facts are that we had a changeover in our finance department without an overlap in duties. And so the person who generally would initiate the renewal of the contract, that position changed, and there was not an understanding apparently of that duty. And then I can only say that there must have been an oversight at his office as well, but I will tell you candidly that our agency generally initiates that contract. So it really is on us. The reason that it was discovered is because the first invoice was going to be processed for October, and it was discovered last week. And so we took immediate action to do that. We have had the contractor submit a Board of Adjustment claim for the services that have already been rendered, but we have administrative hearings that are scheduled more than 30 days out that are already on the docket, which is the reason that we requested this, because of course we did not think in good faith that we could continue to allow him to perform any services without a contract in place. So our choices were either to ask you for consideration to add to this agenda or to cancel all of the hearings until mid-February.
And he did perform services without a contract, is that right?
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from committee members? So what would be the corrective actions put in place to see that something like this doesn't happen again?
Well, they're obviously the new person has been told about this duty, and I've gone back and looked. And the previous time, we don't do that many contracts. We're a relatively small agency. The previous one was done under the previous occupant of that position. However, I have also decided that I personally should docket all of these, although I don't manage these contracts. Obviously, it affects the legal division. I don't want it to happen again, so I'm going to personally calendar anything that affects us from here on out.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Any other word? So I believe this may be my last committee to chair, because as you know, we rotate between the House and Senate chairmanship. So I understand that next month, Senator Roberts, you'll be having the honors.
Chairman Big Shoes. Follow, but look forward to it. One thing I would love when you stand up to the mic, always state your name so everybody can hear it, so that we can get to know each other well. So I would appreciate that, but really look forward to working together. And Mr. Pringle's still going to keep sharp pencils, and we're looking forward to work well together.
And thank you to our staff who's done a great job during my time on this committee. I appreciate your work. And again, thanks to all the committee members for your service. And with that, we are adjourned.